She had one great eye, remembering my father's mother, Merle Porter King, by LLon King, 2013. She had one great eye, slit in two, blackened, silky, wet, off its kilter, blooded albumen, somehow beckoning the center of you to slide into the center of it, into some deep trap, a whirlpool to nowhere and maybe to everywhere, but only if you dared look. They named her Merle. Her brother had done it with a stick. That was the story. Her twin brother, Bud to everyone, always, but his real name was Earl. He fashioned a stick, wet rawhide twisted on dry bow. One morning, when, as children, the two of them pranced and ransacked, determined to kick all the dust off the prairie, because only children have time for such great tasks. War whoops, chasing circles around the wagons, sharpening sticks, striking them together, carrying on, thinking they had found traces of the hooves of warriors where pebbles had been turned over in what once was prairie mud, exposing slow white worms easily smashed to gore. Their own taciturn grandpa's new wagon dragged along the long furrowed path. Behind 3 mules, 2 oxen, a better outfit than most, something to be proud of, out there, where there was nothing much. That great eye caving in, a sudden shot from Bud's hand-strewn bow sliced it immediately into a bloody mess. They say she didn't even wait to cry. They say she just ran at Bud and tackled him and beat him bloody. Beat him with one hand covering her eye, keeping it in. Her blood or his, they couldn't tell. An aunt stuffed the punctured, broken eye with cotton soaked in whiskey. Her mother lifted her into the wagon, laid her on burlap bags carrying the precious seed corn, and let her lie. Maybe she cried then, but they say she didn't cry ever, just cursed. They went on. Tall, spoked wheels painted dark green, bouncing on shouldered springs like some great insect. Somewhere, many horizons ahead, was a place to go to, a place ever after called the place. The place was a long, wide trench, a hole father and uncles had dug a year before. In the endless, grass-infused soil near willows, cut out blocks of prairie adobe, L-shaped, walled, roofed, chimneyed, with salt cellars built into the walls. Long, not wide, a long space divided by hung blankets, and just outside it, a lean-to for sheltering hay, and a narrow corral, marked by hemp-tangled rope strung between crooked posts, crooked like bent old men, shedding their bark, about to turn into old brown bones, some precious wire too, and a gate, split and hammered. Prairie everywhere, tall grasses, low hills, rolling land, dry land, a few seasonal creeks, but the soil was black under the grass. It packed and it crumbled. Good soil for poor farmers. Spotted Tail rode through here with his stolen wife, taken from a helpless cripple. That was the story. He came through chasing the rebel crow dog who turned and killed him. Up north, just off the reservation, just there, a few miles over, those low purple hills that in spring fill the little stream, Grandpa's Creek, that feeds the place and everyone in it, but only in spring. A year after they arrived, after the sod house was finally roofed, a tree brake planted. Hooves of warriors, dudding horses did thump past. War-decorated ponies, painted and feathered. Wide-eyed men, young men, rubbing cheekbones and noses against the tar-papered windows, looking for weakness, or just out having fun. Yaw, 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 fun. Grandpa's shouts, "Yeah! Get! Yeah, bastards! You go! Get! Shooting them away. No sense wasting birdshot on the young buckaroos. These wild kids from the reservation just north, with their sour smells, shotgun shells, cost money. Hey, get! Hot, hard work. Emptying the cistern, replacing its cool water with greasy, bubbly saliva. Sweaty men, tired, sunburned women with dirty aprons. Mud-speared children tending chickens and geese, chasing everything in sight. Feathers flying. Shooting coyotes. Killing snakes. Hard, dry farming. This prairie, these hills, a kind of forever. Fires were set to burn the endless tall grasses to add richness to the soil. When flames blew close, they were beaten away with blankets traded at the reservation just north. Traded for a lame ox, traded for eggs, traded for horseshoes. While young warriors watched from horseback on a distant hilltop, bending over their mounts. The prairie fires, their mournful eyes. It was a big time then, and it all might have started up again. The sputtering wars had only just ended, soldiers and warriors chasing each other on sweat-foamed mounts, into the hills, killing. All just ended the year before they came to Homestead, just before they came, to change the prairies forever. Not long before the late autumn prairie fires, her split eye was at last uncovered, no longer discharging pinkish tears, filling burlap and cotton, with worm-like gore that looked like chalky rocks, wet, turned, and squashed. Now just an unfetching black hole, surrounded by red-streaked whiteness, slit, off-kilter a bit, split, and bloodied. There were night visits, just a few at first, but increasing. The young men were hungry. Their families were hungry. They were boiling grass on the reservation, wormy meal, thin, sour soup. And they were wild, the young men, the boys. They rode hard, they rode crazy fast. They were seeking merit to win a woman, and food to feed a mother, rushing off the reservation, chased sometimes by soldiers, outrunning the soldiers, frightening. It ended with the taming of the beasts, a place nearby called Wounded Knee. The homesteaders had taken to those words, taming and beasts. No one knew why such ugly words were chosen, floated up and traveled from some biblical story perhaps, but they did. Magnificent, she thought, in some ways, but truly nothing but intruding, begging, drunken beasts. The children were called inside, barefoot, muddied, carrying piglets, running like chicks and hens and the duck and the geese who ran with them. The women wrapped themselves and smothered their bodies deep into the damp and the dust, squeezed into the root cellar, under a floor that was really a ceiling, under the new well house, amid jars of pickled rhubarb and pig's feet and chokecherry jam and coyote hides and precious wild mink skins and all the rest. Dust atop everything, settling on everything, settling still, even long after all the kicking and frolic and panic had eased. Under skins, behind blankets, they hid wherever they could, while breathless men leveraged their elbows, aimed but held their fire, as her own grandpa struggled and cursed and spit, tried to rise to see. A harsh old man determined to protect what he said was his, what he had taken, what he believed he had been given by his God, given too by Lincoln, the great Lincoln, whom he claimed he had seen once riding in a cornfield in Illinois before the Great War, that great war that he cared about more than anything, except possibly his sons and his pigs and the place. He had fought for Lincoln, Lincoln was gone, long gone. But Lincoln's blue soldiers were there still, watching the reservation. The place, his place, hard scrabble. What Mr. Lincoln had given in law on paper, what the soldiers had secured in law by treaty after treaty after treaty after treaty after treaty. That was the place he knew. And that was, he knew for certain, his. The warrior beasts called them pale faces. He was truly a pale face now, fading, this grand old man, once a soldier in the war, who had marched 1,000 miles with a heavy, heavy pack, who had stood against shell that whistled by, zipped past his ear, exploded heads and shoulders around him, behind him, near him, a soldier who hadn't bathed, who slept on icy ground bundled in thin blankets, lice-ridden blankets, a soldier who stood shaking, who fired on command, who held fire on command, who walked forward, bayonet ready, into the smoke, who scrambled backward, zigzagging, also on command, dropping everything to run, but not ashamed, never ashamed, a soldier who had marched home unscathed, leaving a brother behind, buried somewhere in Tennessee. A brother, musket-shot worm bait now, but not forgotten. The old man, stick-thin now, who had broken his back some time before and could no longer walk, only days from the last throes of his agony, the end of his many ambitions. He wouldn't be still, wouldn't let the folk be until he was hoisted up and carried out to talk, to parlez-vous, as he had it, to talk to these invaders, the wild young painted men, the beasts. With his Bible on his breast, they laughed at him. They poked him with coopsticks and tossed his Bible into the cistern. They rode circles around him, hollering. They threw sticks and tossed hay and broke the corral, stole as much wire as they could, quickly cut and unwind, took the mules, the one able ox, and the sows, and then they bolted, raising a trail of dust, tossing it up into the blue day. The ox wandered back somehow, but the mules and the sows were gone forever. Mule meat is no good. Even natives don't like it. Stringy and sour, strong-smelling. Nothing like sweet bison or good venison or tender rabbit. But better than boiled grass. Better than nothing. Off-kilter, but better. The young men rode north toward the purple hills, whooping and waving, singing their songs, singing high, singing deep down in their throats. And that was the story she would tell us, that and how my father was born a decade after, underground, in that same sod house. Born while her father, the old man's youngest son, my great-grandfather, laughed and cried, watching his one-eyed daughter struggle to give birth. Her father, who, just a teenager, had helped bury the twisted, frozen bodies at Wounded Knee, separate them from the frozen ground, scraping at them with sharpened shovels, and then piling them back into the ground in a heap, mostly women and children. That famous battle, if you could call it a battle. And that was how her father, my great-grandfather, who went with the soldiers as part of a civilian militia, volunteers all, but who didn't shoot, refused to shoot, was dying now from cholera. Dying almost the same day my own father was born in the dugout sod house, while the walls of the new wood-slat house were still unraised, not ready yet. The place. Born from his screaming, cursing one-eyed mother, rolling out onto the damp, tamp-hard dirt floor, boiled sheets, blankets. A boy so small, his head fit inside a coffee mug. No one thought he could possibly survive. He told us how she nursed him, how she shook him and choked him alive with cornmeal, That was the story. Over feathers stripped, chicken, steamed, scraped, newly killed, beheaded, breaded, smoked, burned, fried in dirty, well-used oil. The story she told over whiskey, puffing on one of her sugar-oaked cigars, or on her Camel brand cigarettes that yellowed all the wallpaper, laughing, cursing, waving her fingers, found in a cornfield by Bud. A petrified tortoiseshell propped the screen door open behind her, letting in air, letting in flies, a long dead thing cursing them all. A ghost. She cursed it back. She lived a long life, my one-eyed grandmother. Her twin, Bud, who took that eye from her with a flying stick so long ago, coughed up blood and left the planet 5 years before she did, before a sudden stroke split her brain apart, boiled it. Earl and Merle. They lived in the same small Nebraska town all their lives. In separate houses, they rarely visited each other. Bud, Earl, her twin, was always thought the lesser one. He was shy, a drunk. He was never known to have a girlfriend, nor a relationship with anyone really, except a few old lifelong friends near his age. Pickle barrel gossipers, drinking buddies with giant bellies and parchment skin, faded blue bibbed overalls, and Bud was surely a drinker. They both were, but Bud more. Everyone knew old Bud was gay, even a touch effeminate, though he denied it, tried to disguise it, in rough clothing and hard cursing, put on rough ways. Bud's secret closet door never opened. He never got out. Never left it. Never ran free. Never left that town either. Never. Even to try to explain himself to himself. She didn't attend her brother Bud's funeral. She was busy making a cake for a granddaughter's birthday. She wasn't much of a cook. It was one of the few good cakes she ever made. What happened in that womb so many years before? 2 babies growing together in there, Merle and Earl, floating, tangled, tethered, boy and a girl, Earl and Merle. Something must have switched over, passed through the fluid from one to the other. Because all her life, Merle was a most masculine woman, possibly the most masculine person I ever knew. Though she bore 2 children with her husband, a handsome man, a little bent, a gentleman with a high-pitched, nasal voice who managed a small dairy farm, a one-man operation in a very small town. There was a tall milk separator in their basement, gray and metallic, standing on the cold concrete floor, looking like a robot from a 1930s movie. Pictures of cats playing poker on the walls all around it, and on the stairway, walls leading down, all framed. He drove, delivering fresh, teat-squeezed milk every morning. All through the tiny town, an old rusted pickup. He always went alone, the radio soft, singing country songs to himself as he drove. Merle wore men's clothes, always did, all her life. Plaid cotton shirts, dungarees, suspenders, dirty ankle-high brown boots. Her chin had some straggly hairs. On top, the hair was gray, balding in places, always cut short, a man's cut, always. And she was mean to the bone, mean to all her kin, quick-tempered, her angular bones, all of them jerky, all of them mean. Her blood-laced eye off-kilter, split diagonally, sliced through, uncovered, unhidden, not spinning, not bobbing, not bulging, not blinking, not bleeding any tears. Just a split, swollen orb, off-kilter. Seeing things, possibly, seeing in directions, possibly, that we children, even with our young, bright, curious eyes, trying not to be caught looking away from it, looking away from her, could never see.